Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to be installing some BC coilovers, roll center adjusters and upper and lower ball joints. And here they are. Yeah! So when you get them, they'll actually be in this box, and then you'll open it to find this box, and then when you open it up, there we go. Take all this crap out, and there are the coilovers. Beautiful. So I've got some upper ball joints, lower ball joints and RCAs here. I'm going to install all this stuff today and the coilovers tomorrow, but everything's going to be in one video. When you have to film everything that you're doing, it takes 10 times longer to do the job. Alright, so I'm going to jack the car up and we'll get started. By the way, if you want to know where the jacking point is, I just use the front subframe. And even though I use jack stands, I always leave this in place just in case. I used a 21mm impact socket to remove the wheels. There was a lot of dirt underneath the lower ball joint, so I used some warm soapy water and just cleaned it off as best I could. There'll be a split pin that you need to remove before you can remove the nut. So I use some wire cutters there to just bend it round to the other side. Once it's straight on the other side, you can use a hammer to knock it through enough to get a grip on it on the other side. I used wire cutters for this because you can get a better grip than you can with pliers. Every car is different when it comes to rust and seized nuts, and it completely depends on the car. On this left side, it wasn't too bad at all, but on the right side, it was really bad, so good luck. To gain access to this nut, you're gonna have to remove the caliper, and that's just these two nuts here. I think they're 13mm. To remove this clip, you can just use a small screwdriver. Then you'll need a 17mm socket to remove the nut. This top nut also has a clip, and I believe it's also 17mm. I used a ball joint splitter here to separate the upper control arm. I didn't end up actually changing the upper ball joint due to the kit I had not really being fit for the job, so I'll have to do this another time. I didn't want to damage this, which is why I used this ball joint splitter and not this one. This one's in pretty good condition, so I'm going to reuse it. But obviously this one is going to be replaced by this, so it doesn't matter if I ruin that one, so I'm going to be using this. These are just two different types of ball joint splitter, and it depends on what you're doing as to which one you need. Alright, so we moved everything out the way. Now it's just me and you, ball joint. It's just me and you. A couple of days before you do this job, I recommend you spray a lot of WD-40 on all of the nuts and joints that you're going to need to separate. Be extremely careful when you're removing ball joints, and always wear safety goggles. These things come off violently. That was one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to do on a car in my life. Anyways, it's off, so now I can cut this cable tie, put this to the side, and put the first coilover in. Right now, I'm just gonna clean all the crap off here. This is your cable for your ABS sensor, so you need to take this bolt out. It's a 10mm. Okay, so from the engine bay, this is the left-hand side, so there's the igniter here. This needs to move out the way, so you undo 12, 12, 12, and then you can undo this one and then swivel it to the left. Gonna clean this area off before I put the new one in. Now I'm gonna slide the coilover in. I'm just gonna put the bolts on here. I'll just do it loose first. And then I'll push it up from the top and fasten them like this. Before I reattach the ABS sensor cable, I'm going to adjust the ride height. Before I start playing around with ride height or anything like that, I'm going to put everything else back together. Alright, I'm going to mock it all up here and show you what it's going to be like. So the lower ball joint goes in there, the tie rod in this hole, and then we've got our roll center adjuster which goes on top. And then these two bolts, the longer bolts that you get with the roll sensor adjusters, not the bolts that you get with the lower ball joint, will go in the bottom here. And then the whole knuckle assembly will sit on top of this. So the reason I've got these roll sensor adjusters in the first place is because I'm planning on installing some LS400 brake calipers, and you need these for clearance. So here's the old lower ball joint, and here's the new one. When you're doing ball joints, just remember left on the left side. Don't mix them up. Alright, so I'm just gonna put the lower ball joint on, put the tie rod on here. Obviously, because I didn't change this joint, I need to use the old bolt. This is one from before and this is one from after. I just cleaned it up a little bit. Just gonna put that on there. Right, so I'm gonna put the nut on the bottom. Remember, this is a 19mm. This needs to be torqued to 162 Newton meters. So when you've torqued it up, you want to check that the hole lines up so that you can put the split pin through. So when you put the split pin in, put it with the long end at the bottom. There's a few ways of doing split pins, but this is a totally standard way of doing it. If you want to do it another way, that's fine too. This nut needs to be torqued down to 87 Newton meters. Right, so these are the bolts that you get with the new lower ball joints, but these are the ones you get with the RCAs. So we're going to be installing these ones. So we're going to have one bolt going in here and one bolt in here, and these are going to be torqued down to 113 Newton meters. I've just linked this up loosely for now so I can get everything in place. So I'm having this problem where I'm trying to tighten this, but the shaft inside is just spinning. So I'm going to try something. What I need to do is push this up so it locks the shaft from spinning, and then tighten this up. So the solution was to get the pry bar like this and wedge it up against the inside, push down on it, and then tighten the nut. All the parts I'm reusing, I'm just polishing up. Then I can just pop the pin back in place. These 12mm nuts need to be torqued down to 35 Newton meters. Okay, I've repositioned the jack so that it's under the knuckle, which means when I raise it, this is going to slot into the frame. And once you've got it in place, the bolt should just slot through. Okay, just put the nut on the other side, and I think this bolt is torqued to 63 Newton meters, which sounds really low, so don't take my word for it. I found it online, and everywhere I checked, it was 47 pounds-foot, which is 63 Newton meters. The bolts at the back of the caliper, here and here, are torqued down to 34 Newton meters. And that is it. I'm not gonna lie, it was a nightmare, but it's done. Okay, so I've just put the wheel on just as a mock-up, and you can see that it's definitely gonna be lower when I drop it to the ground as opposed to this side. Okay, as for ride height, I'm probably gonna set it to the maximum height that it goes, just because of the RCAs. I'm not sure what kind of effect that's gonna have, and until I've done the rears, then I can start setting everything up, send it to the garage for alignment. Because of filming everything always takes time. You know, it makes the job take 10 times longer than it's supposed to be. I managed to get one corner due to seized parts, filming, and all the other problems that I encountered. So obviously for the right side, I don't have to film the front again because it's the exact same thing. When I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to do the right side on the front, and I'll make a start on the rear. I would recommend that you don't tighten down your ABS sensor, just because you're going to be adjusting height a lot. Make sure to brush up before you drop the car, because some of these pieces can be quite sharp and you don't want to risk a puncture. Hello, it's the next day, and we're going to do the rears now. It's actually a week later, but let's go. Alright, so the back wheel's off, and I think what we're going to do is get this 19mm bolt here. Then there's some, what I've heard are 12s, but only 13s fit on mine, maybe because they're rusted or something. And then we need to take this panel off here to get access to the top of the struts. Right, so let's take this mat out first. Then we have to take this tray out. So you've got 3 clips to take out. There's one here at the bottom, there's one here at the top in the corner, and there's one here. So I just pulled at the top with 2 screwdrivers, and I did ruin the clip, as you can see, but I'll just put new ones in, it's fine. And to stop the stem falling through, I just grabbed it from the bottom. I'm just gonna pull it out. Well, that didn't go as planned. Never mind, let's just pull it out. There we go. I think it might ruin it if you, I don't know, who cares, they're just little plastic clips. You can get some more for super cheap anyway. Oh, guess we're not using those again. There's a 10mm bolt here that you need to take out. Then this clip comes off. And you should be able to pull this panel back, and there's the top of the struts. You're gonna need a deep 14mm socket for this, and maybe a breaker bar or a small impact. This isn't because they're particularly tight, it's just because it's awkward. So I'm going to use a spring clamp for this, and the reason why is because usually you'll be able to loosen this bolt from the lower control arm and swing it downwards, but obviously because I'm using a jack, I don't know if it's going to go far enough to be able to get the coilover out. Let's stop there for 1 second. Now I'm going to show you 2 methods of changing the rear coilovers. I highly recommend that you use the second method. This method is where you drop the rear control arm. If it's not possible for you to do that, then you can use the other method. I'm just going to show you both because that's what I did, and I found the second one so much easier. First method that I use is the one that I don't recommend. The reason I don't recommend this is because you need 2 people, and plus it's just more awkward. When I show you the other side of the car on the rear, that's the one I think you should use. So these are really cheap and they're easy to use. Basically, there's an end with no thread on it that goes on the same end as the bolt, and then there's one that does have thread in it, and that goes on the other end, and you've got 2 sets of them. You put one either side, and then you can screw this in. Obviously this is going to be like this, and then it'll compress the spring so you can get it out. As you can see, the spring is compressed. To get this big bolt out, I used a pry bar, just like this. It's so close, it's out the hole, but it won't come out the arch. I can't compress the spring anymore because this bolt is against the axle. So I'm going to take the caliper off and then it'll easily come out. So there's 2 bolts at the back here. Okay, so I've undone this bolt and this bolt, and now the caliper should come away. Let's see. There we go. Make sure you support your caliper, don't let it hang by the cable. There should be plenty of room to be able to get it out now. Let's try again. As with the fronts, I'm not going to play around with the preload. I'll install them first and then I'll adjust them. So if you're doing this by yourself, I suggest that when you've put it in, you can put something in the bottom of the strut here so you can hold it in place while you put the nuts on the top. Again, if you're doing this by yourself, the easiest way to do it is pull up with one hand from the center of the coilover and use the other hand to just fasten down the nuts. So on the lower part of your coilovers, you're going to have this cable tie that's holding these 2 inserts. Obviously cut the cable tie and you're going to use these inserts. Here I'm just using the jack so that I can raise the lower control arm and line up the hole for the coilover. To adjust the ride height, the bottom ring locks everything in place. Loosen the bottom ring to allow adjustment. Now you want to turn the smaller upper ring to adjust the ride height. Turning to the right will loosen the threads and raise the ride height. Turning to the left will tighten the threads and lower the ride height. I recommend not adjusting the large ring at the top. This will change the spring preload. I used vernier calipers to measure ride height because it's extremely accurate. At the front, the measurement between the 2 small rings after locking the bottom ring was 112 millimeters and the rear 65 millimeters. This is a good ride height for me and didn't scrape much. It took many adjustments and you might have to do the same to find the perfect ride height for you. If you want a good baseline though, you can use my numbers. So if you just put this bolt back in here in this bracket, then this should actually keep it in place. It's a little bit rocky, but I don't think it'll cause any noise or anything like that. And just while I'm here, I'm going to show you how little rust there is on this IS300. It's insane. And it's the same with the boot floor as well. Not one patch of rust. So I got very lucky with this car. Anyway, I've finished this side. I'm going to go do the other side and then we'll drop it and see what it looks like. If you're having trouble getting this bolt out here, just wiggle it like this as you pull it out, and it should be alright. I've already got spring compressors on, but if you're having trouble, you can put a jack underneath, and it should just work the same. Right, so I haven't got anyone to help me push the knuckle down so I can get the coilover out. So I'm going to try to do it the other way. I'm going to take this 13mm bolt out. I'm going to take this 19mm bolt out. and drop the lower control arm and see if it'll come out. So I've got these two bolts off. That one was an absolute nightmare. This one, not so bad, but I can't get the bolt out, so I'm going to hit it from this side with a screwdriver and knock it through to the other side. So it turns out I do have enough room to swing the lower control arm down to get the coilover out. Maybe next time I'll do it this way. There's not going to be a next time. Do this part, pop it in at the top, and then twist this to the side, and it will kind of lock it in place so that you can at least get the nuts on the top from the inside. When I took out the sway bar link bolt, it was like this, so I had to go to my nearest parts store and get some new hardware for it. Now, as you can see, I readjusted the rear coilovers, and then I readjust them again. Then I readjusted the front coilovers, and then I readjusted them again. The ride height measurements I gave you before are after many adjustments. On my IS300, I had these covers, these mud guards that were looking kind of ugly and actually scraping some speed bumps when I went over, so I removed them, I cleaned everything up, and I found a massive amount of mud collection from these, but no rust, luckily. So 10 AM the next week, I went for an alignment. I was very fortunate that they let me film so I could get footage and complete the story for you guys. The alignment was carried out on a Hunter machine, which is a laser alignment system. The lasers allow for super accurate readings so that camber, caster and toe can be adjusted properly. The next voice you'll hear is their alignment technician Simon, who's going to explain the process on the screen.
Basically, obviously here this is the front camber, which is negative on both sides. You've got the caster, which is not actually adjustable, but we can adjust it by moving other stuff, like by taking the shock up, it actually affects the caster. And then you've got obviously click onto next graph, that's your steer ahead, so that's basically where the car's going to end up, which is way off at the minute. Once we do the toe, and the total toe and the steer ahead should come back exactly, or at least in the manufacturer's tolerance. And then obviously you've got your rear then. The total toe on the rear is pretty good. This one we're just going to adjust once we've done set the front up, and then you've got your two negatives on the rear, which is pretty balanced to the front, so I mean there's not a massive amount in that, which is quite a good place to be really.
So we did come across a few issues, namely this rear adjustment here for the toe. I'm going to have to fix that at some point, and also the tyre rods, as you can see here, we had to heat it up pretty hard to get it moving. But apart from that, the car drives so much better, the steering wheel is straight now, and this is the first opportunity I've actually had to look under the car. The chassis is in really good condition. There is surface rust pretty much on all the suspension components, but I'm going to change those anyway. So we ended up with around 1.5 degrees of negative camber all the way around. But this is all going to have to be redone later in the year when I get new wheels and tyres. I do have a front lip for this, which I think will make it look way more aggressive. I just have to get it painted. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who subscribed. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is the first big milestone for me, and I'm super grateful, so thank you so much. That was actually on my list of goals for 2021, and I've already accomplished it, and it's only May, so I'm gonna have to make a new one now, maybe 2,000. As a quick disclaimer, I'm not a mechanic, and you should double check all your torque settings and find advice from a professional if you need to. The install of the coilovers themselves were not difficult at all. It was actually the ball joints that made it really difficult on the front. And as long as when you're doing the rear you use the correct method, as in dropping the lower control arm, you should be absolutely fine. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you got everything that you needed from it if you were doing the same thing to your car. If not, then I hope you enjoyed the process. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.